Welcome to another episode of Anibad Truth and Liberty podcast. Today we have with us Swarna Ajjampur. Hi Swarna, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to connect with you again after college, and it's a little weird, but I think we'll get used to each other soon.
Yeah, so for the viewers, Swarna was a batchmate at Ashoka University, and today we are going to talk about sports in India, sports globally, and we're going to talk about Khelo India, for which Swarna has been here in Guwahati. She is a presenter for Doordarshan at Khelo India. And so we're going to talk about her experience here and also sports in general, sports policy, administration, a lot of stuff.
And sports in the Northeast region as well, because 100%. Of being here in Guwahati and the location itself.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for the conversation, and let's see what we can come up with in this podcast. Yeah.
First, I would like to know, how, when did sports enter your life? At what age? And, what was the initial relationship that you had with sports?
Yeah, I think I can't remember the exact moment that sport entered my life. But I think it's just because, your parents did play a bit of a role in me putting me in sports. So my dad, growing up, he played cricket, he played, volleyball, he played TT, he played whatever game was available to him in school and, outside. So he felt like the need to put his kids in sport, just so that they're active and, they're not sitting at home being really bored or something. He put my brother first in sports. I have an elder brother who's 6 years older than me. Right. So he was really good in swimming as well as cricket. So there came a time when he had to choose between swimming or cricket. And he chose swimming, because of the competition in cricket and stuff like that. And then I just followed my brother's footsteps, just accompanying him to the pool and, going to different events and all of that. And I just learned swimming at the age of 5, and that's how it all started.
Yeah. How crucial is, having to choose a sports at that age, at such a young age? Do you think that sort of almost shapes, for example, a famous example is about MS Dhoni, how he was a footballer initially, and someone's, I think his school coach spotted his goalkeeping skills and sort of made him a wicket keeper.
Yeah.
And then he went on to become one of the greatest, wicket keeper batsmen for India. Do you think it's very crucial, a decision? You don't know, you have little control over it as a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old, but ends up taking being very crucial for your life.
You don't have much control. It's basically, your parents and your family and other people who put you into sport. But there are very few examples of when a kid has to, fight against all odds and go into sport. But you have less control, and I don't think that, you need to be a big MS Dhoni or a big cricketer to, have sport play a crucial role in your life. I think even for a normal person, just a small kid being put in sport, it has a very important role in their life. It can shape their identity, for example, or it can help them make friends if they're lonely, or it can just help them stay fit, physically active, not be overweight or be addicted to their phone or social media. It can help them with self-confidence that they're good in something in life. It may not be academics is not for everyone sometimes. Even if it's not sport, if it's dance or it's music or it's any other hobby, just being good in something, helps a kid a lot in life. And those lessons and those friends that you make when you're a kid, going forward, it can be very, very helpful. And it can be lonely also and can help in these times as well.
Yeah, entirely valid. I wanted to ask though, I, for example, I started playing, the first sports that I sort of was introduced to was Taekwondo for some reason, because we had a very good Taekwondo coach, the late Arup Datta in our school. And later on, I took on to football, and my inspirations were, the Spanish football team and all that. How important are role models in sports, for a young kid? While you said, for lifestyle and health, it's very important that you always are interacting with sports. You were always part of some kind of sports, but at the same time, for young kids, I think role models also like are pretty important, right? And did you have any like as a swimmer, like which is not a very popular, the mainstream of games or commercialized that way?
I think role models are very crucial because like as a kid you need a hero in life, you need like someone to look up to, you need some inspiration to move forward, because otherwise you might not like go on the right track, you might go on the wrong track, do stuff that is not good for you in life in the future. I think for me, like I didn't have like one big like role model. I wasn't like, yeah, this boxer, this swimmer, this person is my role model. I think you take lessons and small things from different people in life, and each person is unique, and I used to take inspiration from different people in life, like for example like different coaches at that time. Then there was obviously my brother, who was himself a national level water polo player and a swimmer. So inspiration from him, inspiration from my dad, who had also played sport, and my teammates and everyone around me. So I don't have like a big name that this person inspires me. But also, right now I would say different like sports people do inspire me. It could be a Mary Kom, it could be a PV Sindhu, it could be any like big sports person. Like I read about them, I listen to their podcasts, and I learn a lot from them as well. So it's different people for different things, I think.
How was the experience as a swimmer at that young age, like at a school level, did you go on to win a lot of trophies, awards? You want to talk us about that, how competitive it was, like the school sporting environment, and what did it do to you, like how it shaped you as a person?
I think it was you could say it was easy at first because you're doing swimming and stuff as a hobby. So I learned swimming. I was just pushed in 16 feet in the pool, and I'm like, survive. That's how I learned swimming. And then eventually I started like doing it regularly, weekends, and then every day, and then it switched to twice a day.
So this was like in a coaching institute, like swimming?
This was
not in school.
It was not in a school. So usually in India, if you need to be a very competitive sports person, you go to an academy or a club or an institute which is good in that sport. And for me, I went to Baswangudi Aquatic Center. For everyone who's watching and who's a swimmer, they know that like this is like one of the big hubs in like swimming in India.
It is in Bangalore, right?
It's in Bangalore, and Bangalore itself is a swimming hub in India. Most of the Olympians and every other person, even if you represent a different state, trains in Bangalore for just the facilities, the weather, the coaching, the infrastructure that's available for swimming. So I trained over there, and then eventually I switched to more competitive batches. Unfortunately for me, I was like not very good at swimming, I would say that. So I it was like quite stressful. You have no time to do homework, you have no time to like even go meet your friends. Like for example, I've missed birthdays, and I've not celebrated weddings. I've like been absent from all of these life events of like people's lives just because of this. And it can be stressful also for a kid. So I like actually stopped because I was like not like I peaked at one point, and then I was not improving beyond that. The pressure got to me, so I stopped for like a few months. I was out of it. I just reflected. I was like, is this really something I want to do?
What age is this?
This is around 6th grade, around 12 years old. Like I'd won a few state level medals and participated in state level. And then I was like, is this something I really want to do and stuff? I stopped. And then I became like a normal kid, going to school, meeting friends, having a normal schedule. And I had so much time on my hands. I'm like, what am I doing? Like, let me like go do something. I didn't know what to do with the extra energy. I didn't know what to do with myself. Like, I didn't know, like, coming back from school at 4:30, what do you do the rest of the day? I'm like,
because you're not attuned to that lifestyle.
I'm like, what what do people do? Because I'm like, I don't know. All my friends were in swimming, or they're like school friends. You don't meet them every day, right? So I'm like, what do I do? And then my brother was playing water polo, and he was like representing Karnataka in water polo in different competitions. So every Sunday, like for people who don't know what water polo is, it's basically handball in water. So, and there are 2 goal posts, and your aim is to like score a goal against your opponent.
Would it be right if I call it football in water? But like you use the hands, of course. But
basically something like that.
Similar rules to football, right?
Similar to that. And it's also quite tough. It's like rugby underwater and stuff. So I started watching my brother play and like started watching his matches. So then I was like, one day I'm just like, you know what? I like team sports. Maybe I should join and try it. I like tried it, and I like really liked water polo. I liked the team, and I love that it was a team game and took a lot of swimming in it, but it was not like entirely swimming. Like you had to use a lot of strategy, a lot of teamwork, a lot of different things to like win. And then when you win as a team, the like entirety of your happiness and the whole celebration is on another level. So that's how I got into water polo. And you spoke about like how it shaped me as a person.
Before we get there, I wanted to ask, what were the specific problems with like you as a swimmer? You talked about, sort of in a way plateauing as a swimmer only, in competitive swimming. What were the specific problems like?
See, the thing is, it's not like specifically a problem. Like, see, it's basically when you are in a sport, like you can only go so far. Your hard work and dedication can only go so far, right? But for me, I don't think I was meant to be a swimmer. My entirety of my performance and everything, no matter how well I trained and stuff, I was not like reaching that level, that extra level that I wanted to reach. And beyond a point, when you're not enjoying something, I don't think you should do it. Even if it's like people telling you, you should do this. And my parents saw this in me, that I'm working hard and stuff, and my performance is not going anywhere. I'm not like feeling happy about myself after a point. So I like just said I don't want to do this anymore. So like these were the things. And also like the sport sometimes picks you. You don't pick the sport, right?
That's true.
So the sport picked me, but then I didn't know if I was good enough, and I like definitely I'm not good enough to be like a international swimmer and all of that. I'm not that good. So like I had to pivot, I had to transition, see where I'm good at, and that's why I shifted to water polo. I love team sports more and all of this. So I made that transition, and I'm happy that I did make that transition.
That must be like a very difficult transition to make as a kid also, right? Having played competitive swimming. But also I wanted to ask, how do you think like, when it comes to sports, there is something natural talent to it? Like, it's like, it doesn't matter like, if you work hard, like, 100x more than anyone else, but if you sometimes don't have the natural edge, you may not be able to be the biggest, player, like a competitor that way. Is it? It's something you would agree with?
It's both talent as well as hard work, there's only one Muhammad Ali, there's only one Virat Kohli, there's only one Ronaldo. Of course there's a genetic edge, there's talent, all of this, but talent is useless if you don't work hard. They obviously work hard more than anyone else in their sport and in their arena. So it's a combination of both things, and I don't know who can predict what ratio of this is talent and what ratio of this is hard work. I don't think anything like that can be possible. But there is an element of talent, of course, in sport, the natural ability, the gift, the God-given gift, if you must say. And if you like are able to identify that gift at an early age and channelize that into a good training system, good sports science, good exposure, then you will be able to make a great athlete, great sports person who will definitely do well internationally.
Do you want to tell us about how sports like, and water polo specifically, I guess, like the team sports like water polo shaped you as a person? Yeah.
Yeah. I think sport like changes everyone's life in a different way, and like teaches you so many things which can't be taught like in a classroom or even your family. Like there's so many lessons which are unsaid in itself. For me particularly, I think it taught me how to deal with life and understand life better, because life has certain rules. You got to play by those rules, but you got to play smartly enough that you win in life, and stick by those rules as well, because if you don't, then you'll be punished. Similar in sport, there are certain rules in sport as there is in life, and you got to like know how to navigate through these rules and systems, build your own cheat codes and patterns to like actually make it and win and stuff like that. So I think without giving like very cliche answers of discipline, hard work, punctuality, of course these are the life lessons that I did learn, but apart from this, just like knowing how to navigate life and the rules of life through sport, I think that's something that was great, and it also like helped me shape my identity, become a better person in society as well. Just being courteous. If someone is hurt, just ask them, are you okay? If you see like someone is not doing well, just ask them. Like these lessons as like something you learn in sport as well. And also I would say like being a kid, you're 14, 15 years old, you're traveling with like 13 or 14 teammates to like the most random places in India, like by train, or like sleeping in a classroom which has a broken fan. There are no facilities and stuff. It helps you, it challenges you how to survive different like situations, and if you got through that, you can get through anything. You feel like that. So that's what it's taught me.
I wanted to ask you about how important is the sports infrastructure in a country, in a state, for a kid, like, right? Because you talked about, it's very important to identify your talent at an early stage, and it gives you a big like advantage, and to channelize that in terms of working hard towards it, and being part of that ecosystem and being part of that sporting infrastructure, right? How important it is, like how significant it is that infrastructure be available for that kid from a very early stage. And do you think India's infrastructure right now is up to that level? Is it getting better? Is it better than what it used to be when we were kids? What do you think?
I think infrastructure is obviously the most one of the most important things that you need to build a great to create a great athlete. So I think it's very important, and obviously like there are certain centers of excellence in India. There are different academies, both private and public. For example, if we take badminton, we have like the Prakash Padukone Academy and all these other big things. But you also have a lot of centers of excellence by the government, like Sports Authority of India, in different centers across India, where the great like Olympians of like boxing, weightlifting, all these different types of sports, they like practice in these arenas. So I think it's definitely gotten better since when we were kids. And like there's a lot more scope for sport right now. There's a lot more viewership coming in from different audiences across rural India. And it's very important that these like sporting venues and facilities are up to Olympic standards, international standards. I'm sure everyone's watched like Mary Kom or like a Dangal. They see that when you're training in a village and rural India, or like where most of India comes from, the facilities are like very not good. Like basically they're just like for that particular region or that particular village. And we need more centers of excellence. We need more private people also coming in to put funds in sports for infrastructure in particular. But it's getting there. I think it's going in a good direction, and it also goes both ways. The more great athletes we produce, the more names that are represented in World Championships, Olympics, Commonwealth Games, Asian Games, it's going to flow both ways. So when they see potential, they're going to invest. There's going to be money coming in. And you spoke about infrastructure. I think infrastructure is just one umbrella in the entire spectrum.
Yeah.
We need to look at, sports science, coaching, physios, all these sports psychologists, the entire spectrum of facilities within infrastructure to actually make it work and make a difference.
You talked about private-public partnerships, right?
Yeah.
We're seeing in the past few years a surge of franchisee sports, I mean, obviously, the big break was, in a way, the Indian Premier League, of course, in cricket. I mean, and that was sure to be successful because given the popularity and craze about cricket in the country. But more recently, what we're seeing is a surge in other sports, like sports that weren't as mainstream, nowhere close to as mainstream as cricket, of course. Like Kabaddi, for example, like an indigenous sport, right? I mean, it's a very Indian sport. It has certainly, it got a break. It got a big break in the form of the Pro Kabaddi League. And then we see a bunch of other franchises, like badminton has its franchise now. There was hockey in between. I think it has stopped, but they are coming back, I think. Hockey India League, I think.
Yeah.
That's what I hear.
Football as well.
ISL, yeah.
Yeah, ISL.
Indian Super League, yeah, as well.
Boxing is also there now.
Yeah. Boxing is also there, right?
Yeah.
How important are these, franchisee sports, which are happening because of private investments, opposed to years before that, I mean, this has happened, after liberalization, I guess, broadly speaking. But before, there was only it was a government-driven thing, like sports largely, But right now, these investments, how are they changing sports? How is it changing sports in India?
I think it's crucial, even if an athlete wants to consider sport as a profession, not just, something you do in school or college as a hobby, but as a profession. First of all, you need opportunities, and earlier there were no leagues and other, big sporting events held by private entities.
Yeah.
So with leagues coming in for different sports, be it badminton, be it boxing, kabaddi, as you mentioned, the Pro Kabaddi League is a great example of, how an indigenous game has gained so much importance.
Yeah.
So it's crucial. It's great for talent to be identified as well. It's great for someone to take sport more seriously as a profession, and it's also great for viewership, audience, to be able to connect with them. And once you are in a league, you're not just seen as a sports person anymore. If you make it really big in the league and the viewership numbers are big enough, you almost become a celebrity, right?
Yeah.
With becoming a celebrity, with playing in a league, there comes so many other streams of revenue also for you as an athlete. Branding, you get endorsements.
Yeah.
You're seen as a role model and example to look up to for kids.
Mm-hmm.
It's crucial for leagues to exist in India, and it exists all over the world. So why not in India?
Yeah. Would you agree it incentivizes young kids to aspire to be sports person more than before, because what it used to be before, let's say, apart from cricket, which always produced celebrities, other sports there used to be players who would go on to the international stage, who would participate in the Olympics, who would participate in Commonwealth Games, Asian Games, all these big events, but their main revenue was in the form of a government job. The government would offer some job, and that was the only sort of, income that they had. But now, purely because of their talent, they are earning, right? And that's a great incentive to be a sports person.
It's great. It's a great incentive to be a sports person. But it not only helps the sports person, but you need to look at the entire ecosystem that it helps.
Yeah.
So many new coaches are hired. So many new physios are hired. So much staff is hired.
Right.
There's so much, everyone in the entire sporting ecosystem benefits.
Yeah.
It can also benefit the economy through other avenues like tourism and other things that we won't even think of.
Yeah.
So I think this is crucial. It must happen, and I hope people watch more sports other than cricket in India. They watch other leagues. They support other sports people. Even if you don't follow every single sport, maybe pick your favorite sport and follow it, support it. That's important. And if you aspire to be a sports person, the world is only going to get bigger and better for
Yeah.
you. Like more opportunities are going to open up. And after COVID-19, everyone knows that, you know, most kids nowadays are following their passion.
Yeah.
They're not like, you know, like being like, yeah, I need to go to college, I need a degree. All of this is a little bit old school, I feel. So I think, yeah, kids nowadays are aspiring to take up sport as a career professionally.
Yeah. The last Olympics that we had in Tokyo, like we got the first individual gold medal in athletics, right? Neeraj Chopra in javelin. This year we have Paris Olympics coming up, Summer Olympics. What do you think? Like, how do you think India is gonna feature in the Olympics? Like, you know, do you have great expectations as a very close follower of sports from this Olympic campaign?
Yeah, I think Neeraj Chopra's performance, first of all, was just mind-blowing. Like, people who are watching his entire event, it was just like goosebumps and goosebumps all over. Not only like the first like medal, not only the only Olympic medal in the Olympics, but like the icing on the cake was the first medal in the entire like Olympic campaign that happened, right? So it was like a beautiful moment. And me being here in Khelo India Games at Guwahati, interviewing so many athletes, so many of them look up to Neeraj Chopra, and they're like, if he can do it, why can't I do it? You know, that mentality is coming. With the performance in the Olympics next year, this year in Paris, I think we can expect like at least the same standard as the Tokyo Olympics. So the Indian team in the recent Asian Games in China did pretty well. They got 107 medals. Compared to their previous performance in Jakarta in 2018, where they got only 70 medals. So this has been like the highest ever total of like medals ever in Asian Games for India. So a lot of like high expectations, a lot of high hopes. But it could also be the medal tally in the Asian Games could also be because of, you know, many countries not participating in. Many women not coming in as well. I read in the news that different Middle East and countries like Afghanistan, all of these didn't participate because of their own reasons.
Right, I didn't thought of that. That's a really mind-boggling thing, because Asia has more countries which may have less less participation in several countries is what I heard from different sources. So because of the very high Asian Games medal tally, people could expect a very, very good performance in the Olympics. But what we need to understand is the Olympics is very different from a Commonwealth Games or a Asian Games. It's like open to the entire world. So you can, I think realistically speaking, you can expect a similar tally as that of the Tokyo Olympics, which was 7 medals. We hope and pray that we get more medals, but obviously the core medal winning sports in India being shooting, boxing, weightlifting, these three have always fetched us a lot, many medals. In the Olympics, hockey men doing really well. I think we can expect a medal from them as well. But the Indian women's hockey team have not qualified for the Olympics, unfortunately. So that's a bit of a sad story. But different boxers like Lavlina, all of these big names, we can maybe look forward to their bout and their fight and cheer them on. That's all I could say. Realistically, something similar to the last Olympics, because all the systems and infrastructure and every other thing that we put in place, it's going to take maybe a decade to show, because results are not like, results don't happen overnight. It's just, we just need to remember that the Tokyo Olympics was just 3 years ago. And it's very hard to like build a brand new Olympian in like 3 years. So it's going to take time. And we've got to just allow the system and allow the work that's been put in place to show up, like say in a decade or so. I'm curious to know events like Khelo India, right, which you were a part of, you were presented there. How important are these in terms of finding talent? And because the one that you covered just now were the University Games. and I'm assuming there's a lot of talent there in these universities, right? How important are these events in terms of finding talent, and how is there some effort into it to tailor it for big events like the Olympics and Asian Games, and are there like some very specific targets that these events are aiming for going forward to improve the entire ecosystem? And what has been your experience this time here at Khelo India?
Yeah, that's a very loaded question. Thank you for that. I'll try to answer it to my best ability. So the Khelo India Games, their main objective is to identify talent at the grassroots, and also secondly increase participation at the grassroots level itself. And it has, it's the first of a kind multi-sporting event that happens in India. Apart from, the big events like National Games, which is very high-level seasoned athletes who are internationally, who are international medalists come in for these events. So this is, a small step in the direction of an athlete's journey. Particularly the Khelo India Youth Games in Chennai, which I was also, part of in the broadcast team from Doordarshan. That is also very crucial, because once you catch and identify talent at a young age, it's easier to push them forward in the ecosystem. There are representatives from different sports, from different, authorities looking at the talent that comes into these games. And the facilities I heard for some sports in particular are very good in Khelo India University Games. For example, I recently spoke to a badminton athlete. Her name is Anupama Upadhyay. She was former junior number 1. So she was telling me that the facilities for badminton in Khelo India University was very similar to international competitions that she's attended, be it championships or other events that she has gone abroad. The facilities and the way the tournament itself is conducted is very similar for certain sports, be it badminton, be it TT, and I've spoken to a few tennis players and other people. So they've told me that this is very good as a practice for different international events. That's what we want. That's what we're looking for. More participation, more grassroots, development in sports. So I think this is a decent enough, good platform. The more the events, the more the sporting, tournaments that happen, it's better for an athlete. And it's always better to have more competitions to participate in, so that you're prepared for a bigger stage to showcase, what you really have going for you.
So help me understand, so Khelo India has different events, right? So what you just covered in Guwahati were the university games. So what was it in Chennai, and what are the other sort of events that they hold?
Khelo India, they have I think 4 different types of games. The first one is the youth games, which is for school going students below the age of 19 years. So if you're a school going kid and you're talented, there are certain ways in which you can qualify. So that is one. It's a state-wise competition, so you represent your state. The second is the university games, which is happening in Guwahati. So this is a senior level competition. Above the age of 19 years and above, you can participate in this. In this, you represent your university. And third category is the winter games. So all the winter sports, be it skiing, be it ice hockey, be it all of these different winter sports which happen in the snow. I don't think Indians are even aware that, India plays winter sports. There is a winter Olympics itself which happens. So, this is for the winter sports, which is, be it snow, be it ice. These are the winter sports. This year it happened in Gulmarg and Leh recently. And then the fourth type is the para games. So this is for all the para athletes out there who are so good. They've represented India on such a great platform. So this is para games for them. And para games happened in Delhi last year. So yeah, these are the 4 different avenues and categories, and it like kind of mimics the Olympics itself, because there is Summer Olympics for all the sports, there is Winter Olympics for the games, there is also Para Olympics. So it kind of mimics that format itself in its own way.
And it's entirely hosted by the government, right? Like it's the Ministry of Sports is...
Yeah.
So Khelo India operates under Ministry of Sports?
Yeah, Ministry of Sport, yeah. Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports in particular.
Okay. And I'm guessing, like, this is what is important, right? To fill up, like, the calendar with, like, different events. Because earlier what used to happen was that there were gaps in the middle, right? Like, there used to be vacuums where there would be no event. So I think often preparations would, slack off, and then you would look forward for other events. So, like, Khelo India fills that vacuum in terms of making athletes prepare for something, look forward to something, and keeping that preparation at that level.
Yeah, it's always, for a high level athlete, it's always good to have more competitions,
right, so
that they're able to practice for bigger events. But that being said, some bigger athletes who are very seasoned and who have already represented India on different platforms, sometimes because of their busy schedule, and they also need to recover and rest, they don't come for some events. Maybe they don't come for a Khelo India.
But like for the grassroots, this is very significant.
But for the grassroots, it's very significant, and it helps participation. And as I mentioned earlier, it has very good facilities, and it has a very good team of organization. Because as I spoke to different athletes in some sports in particular, they said that the avenues and the facilities are very world class, and it helps them prepare for international events.
Yeah. So, Swarna, a lot of athletes that you talked about just now are women, right? And I'm assuming like you interviewed a lot of women like just now in Khelo India, and in your like career as a sports journalist and anchor as well. What are the unique challenges that women athletes face in this country? Our country largely is still has misogynistic underlines, like from that perspective, like how are do you see like sports developing at an equal rate for women as well, and do you see a greater participation, greater interest among women when it comes to sport, and are they being able to develop at that pace as well?
Yeah, I think the first part of your question, the challenges that women athletes face, I think there are like very high level challenges and struggles that women athletes face, which are very different from men, I would say. Of course, men also face a lot of challenges and struggles, but these are like very gender specific, I would say. The first one being, most high-level athletes in India, be it different sport, be it football, be it hockey, be it boxing, they face just the stigma of just playing sport, being a girl. If you look at, societal norms, if they come from rural India, if they come from a village, if they come from semi-urban India, their parents' mindset is not as open, right? They feel that, we need to get the girl married. What is this? It's weird that a girl is like wearing a skirt, or it's weird that she's wearing like tight clothes and playing a sport. Culturally, for them, they're not used to this having been done before. Their mindset is very closed, it's not very open. So for an athlete to have been, be successful from coming from a different community, rural community. I was speaking to a footballer called Soumya, who has represented India in the Asian Games in football.
Wow.
So she comes from a farmers community in rural Tamil Nadu. And she was telling me how, earlier when she was just going and practicing sport, everyone in her village were like, what are you doing? This is not what women do. And then when she represented India in Asian Games, and, when people saw her playing on TV, they celebrated her. she became a hero in that village, and every girl started looking up to her, and so many girls joined sport. So yeah, like she was that change, and people's mindset can be a bit closed off, and until they see success and they see you successful, they're not going to understand why you're doing this, or what you're even going to gain out of this. So it's just that mindset and that cultural, socio-cultural shift that we need to bring in, and I think it's happening slowly, as we saw like movies like Dangal, Mary Kom, different movies like women athletes are bringing a change. This is like, I think, the biggest hurdle and struggle that like women athletes face. I think definitely the second part of your question, which was about more women in sports, are they participating, are things changing? I think definitely it's changing. Definitely they're participating. We can see this through even different tallies in the Olympics as well. We saw how good Lovelina was in the Olympics as a boxer. She comes from the state of Assam as well, where here in Guwahati. So there is definitely a change. There's definitely a shift in participation, more women coming in. People care less about the stigma. They care less about, what's culturally appropriate, and they just want their kids to be happy, follow their passion. So this is definitely happening. It's a bit of a slow change, but it's definitely a change, and that's what we want to see. It's a positive change, and I think it's also a little bit of an advantage in a sense for a woman in sport. Speaking from my own experience, being a water polo player, our coach used to make us practice against the men's team, men's water polo team, just to build strength, to build speed. And as I was interviewing a lot of women athletes, they said that their coach does make them practice against boys, because boys, this might be a bit controversial or a bit of a debate, but I would say a male athlete does have certain physiological advantages and biological advantages, be it their height, be it their size or something, that just, if you just break down muscle mass, muscle percentage in a man versus a woman, it's different, right? A man is going to have more muscle mass, more strength in that particular sense. So if you practice against someone who's a guy and you're a girl, obviously you're going to like pick up a different perspective. You're going to pick up different things. So a lot of male athletes, especially boxers and even people in athletics, racing and all of this, they practice against male athletes, and this helps them in a different way, and it gives them an advantage. So I think that also is good for a athlete.
So these athletes that you spoke to, and you yourself, like having had this experience, you're saying it does benefit like women athletes when they at the practice, like at the training level, they compete with men.
Like it's not that male athletes are not doing their own practice,
right?
But maybe after their practice session, if they're free for an hour or something, or half an hour, then they do practice with a girl, like for some time, just to help them out. Why not, if they're friends or something? Recently a fencer who's represented India told me that her coach used to make her practice against a guy just for the speed and agility that a guy has, and the height advantage also, to practice against an opponent taller than her, because she was the tallest fencer in all of the girls. So her coach made her practice against a guy because he had a height advantage, to just prepare her in case international tournament someone's taller than you, then how will you fight? What strategy are you going to use? So in this sense it could help like a girl get better in that sense. So participation is increasing. There are advantages, there are disadvantages, but you got to break these barriers, and you got to break the stigma, break some of what society says sometimes to be a female athlete in particular. And we have like so many stories in India that of people who have done this.
That's very interesting and insightful actually. You talked about Lovelina, right, who is a great boxer. We are hoping a lot of great things from her, from Assam also, like my fellow Assamese athlete. I wanted to ask you about, since you have been in Guwahati for a while now, what has been your experience in terms of observing the sporting ecosystem in Northeast? Because I personally feel there is a lot of untapped talent here, which hasn't gotten enough exposure, and also because of various reasons, political reasons, social reasons, we haven't been able to get that exposure here. Like our athletes haven't gotten that exposure historically. We have been a region that was overlooked, for a long time, but now we are finally getting this platform. Like our athletes are getting the platform, our people are going outside to participate, like we are at the international stage and our athletes are achieving great things. Like, what has been your experience interacting with Northeastern athletes? Yeah.
I mean, obviously Northeast has like great talent. It's not even a question that, Northeast has great talent or, whether they can produce sports people.
Yeah.
The question is, how do we tap this market and how do we get more sports persons from the Northeast to live up to their best potential? Look at Mary Kom, look at Mirabai Channu, Lavleena, great names from the Northeast, Sarita Devi, and this, like, just the medal tally last time in the Olympics, 7 medals.
Yeah.
Out of that, two medals, Mirabai Channu and Lavleena, are from Northeast.
Right.
So you can imagine 2 out of 7 medals are people coming in from, Northeast. Mirabai Channu from Imphal and from a village near Imphal, and Lavleena from Assam, right?
Yeah.
So this is like a great story, not just for the region, not just for the athletes themselves, but I think it should be a lesson for the entire country to understand that, we can't ignore Northeast and Northeastern sports in particular, because they're representing your country on a global platform. There's so much to learn from them. There's so much of a different type of struggle that they need to go through just to reach the platform, reach an international podium.
Right.
So I think it's beautiful. And the geopolitical factors that you mentioned, obviously those are very tough circumstances, and these factors are also factors that are not in our control, and despite this, despite these challenges, these athletes have taken it as a strength rather than a weakness, and like showcase themselves in the international competitions, and like done so much for us. So I think we need to be proud of them, and if there are athletes from Northeast, we just need to support them, increase sports infrastructure, increase funding, support them in any way possible that they need. And yeah, I think it's just a beautiful story, just sport in Northeast. The rest of India feels like cricket is their religion, but I think Northeast is one region in India where football is their religion.
Yeah.
That's also a beautiful thing. And it is a beautiful thing, and we need to support athletes from this region. Let's look at maybe the performance in next few international competitions, and we'll be maybe able to tell how good these guys are, which they already are. We know that.
And sports can be a great way for all of us, like, and especially young athletes, to overcome these, geopolitical barriers. I also wanted to ask you about sports governance in the country right now. Like, definitely over the past decade or two, sporting funding in sports has increased, and we are no longer, I believe, a country who only focus on cricket. We've talked about all the franchisee leagues and all that. But funding in sports has generally increased, and focus on different sports have also increased. How do you compare India with other countries in the world? Are there sporting champions or sporting models that they have? Like let's say like a United States or a China who are always the top 2 in Olympics. Like they are always fighting for 1 and 2 in the Olympics, or like a Great Britain or something. How do you compare our model with those countries?
Yeah, so I think each of the 3 countries that you mentioned, the US, China as well as Great Britain, all of the 3 countries have very different sporting systems and different systems for identifying talent, and how they push their athletes to the international podium.
Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So I think the UK or the Great Britain model is more of something similar to what we have in India, which is basically there are certain centers of excellence under the Ministry of Sport sports and government. So like for example in India it's Sports Authority of India or SAI, and overarching this entire body there are many centers of excellence around the country. It could be sports specific as well as multi-sport, so that's something that's kind of there in the UK as well that I think India has imbibed.
It's a lot of like, central funding towards sports, like a central government funding that comes here.
Yeah. And then there is US, which their model is more of the university model, wherein you push athletes towards sports scholarships. You go to a different type of like you go to a university and you're an athlete in that. You're a student athlete in that university. It could be like there are 3 different divisions. So the university model in the US consists of 3 different divisions,
right.
NCAA divisions 1,
Okay.
2 and 3.
Okay.
So 1 is like the highest division that an athlete can get into, followed by 2 and 3.
Yeah.
So like the main different Olympians that you see, the great Olympians and stuff, they train in NCAA tier 1 colleges.
Okay.
So like these are like the top Ivy Leagues, or these are the sports scholarships that they get. They train through university and then they're pushed to the international podium through the system.
Right.
And then the third system is China, which is more of a system where when you're very young, you're pushed into the system and you're like trained, you're identified with sport you're good at, and then you're trained in a very, very strict and very, very monotonous, difficult regime where, your entire life's ambition, goal, everything becomes that sport. Kids from rural China move to these particular sporting schools, as they call it, and then they're trained in very serious conditions, and they have a very tight schedule. They live away from their family, their parents at a young age, maybe, even below the age of 10. To participate. So it's
like they are like separated from the conventional schooling system fully, and there's a different sporting system altogether in China.
Yeah,
is what you're saying.
That's
Wow.
a sporting system itself. They're like sporting schools. So they wake up, they train, they do all of their activities, they rest, they train, they do this. They're educated on the side,
Alright.
They're educated. After their sporting commitments are done.
Yeah, it's
So
not like coaching after school. It's like
It's the
studies
other way around.
after sports.
Yeah.
Wow,
It's the other way around. So it's pretty
that's very
intense.
interesting, yeah.
It can be quite hard also for a kid because you move away from your family and you're not allowed to like contact them very regularly also. Because it can be seen as a distraction for a young kid, right? Just thinking of home, thinking of family, thinking of the comfort that family and home provides. So this is like the third system in which it's done.
Yeah, and how do you compare it with India? And are there, like you already stated that our model is pretty similar to the British model, but is there anything we can learn from the Chinese or the US model? Is there something that we can emulate, or rather not emulate from these models in India?
I think there are small things which we can emulate from each of these systems for sure. Like just the China model, I think, is very good at identifying talent and just keeping consistency within the system. Because of huge population density of China as well as India, we can like take some inputs from the Chinese model as well, just because of keeping more kids in the sporting system and nurturing them that way, but not as intense as that, of course.
Right.
And then we can maybe pick up some tips from the university model in the US, where you encourage kids in university, because a lot of private universities in India do have very good facilities, do have great infrastructure, and that's also something I'm seeing in the Khelo India University Games right now.
Right.
That very good colleges which have great facilities, private ones, are recruiting kids for sport and helping them train and trying to build on that. So I think in bigger, more niche sports which require more funding, for example shooting or fencing, the university model could be a good start to get better.
All right, thank you, Swarna, for joining me. This was a great conversation. Do you have anything else to say, anything else to talk about when it comes to sports or anything else?
I think that was a beautiful conversation. Thank you so much for having me. I think I would just want to ask you one question. What has sport taught you in your life? You mentioned that you were doing martial arts and you switched to football. So the little moments that you had on the field and off the field, what did sport teach you?
Wow, I wasn't expecting that, so I'm very unprepared, but I will answer it. I guess like one of the foremost things that I take away from sports is, I guess, community. Like, when I learned Taekwondo, and later, like I was also into football a lot. I used to play football very frequently. It was very important that a kid, I think when I retrospectively, look back in those days, it's very important that kids have communities, right? And not only schools, they have multiple communities to grow and to, interact with people. So sports was that sort of an avenue where I got like a community where we were learning a whole new thing together, right? We're developing, for example, in Taekwondo, it was martial arts, right? We're doing so many different things when I look back. And even in football, I was making new friends. I was always hanging out. That was like another community that took form. And when I look back, that is something that I really miss now. Like as an adult, when I've entered the work life or even academics, if I'm overwhelmed by that, that is something that I miss thoroughly. So that was a big takeaway, and it sort of, I think another part of it was also sports made me confident in life. I think what I generally observe is that sports people are very confident people because they tend to be in situations in sports because it's a very competitive sport. There's always an element of competition in all sports, right? So they are in a very they are in a sort of a mindset where they're always competing. So that makes them really confident. So that was another takeaway from sports. So I think it made me into a well-rounded individual, and I see that with a lot of other athletes and sports people. Yeah, I think those are the two foremost takeaways for me.
Yeah, I think those are like beautiful takeaways and beautiful things that you learned because as you said, community, having a great community is so important. And sports not only helps you form a community, but it helps you break barriers.
Right.
Sport doesn't see boundaries, it doesn't see borders, it doesn't see religion, it doesn't see language, it transcends boundaries.
Right.
So yeah, that's a very, very beautiful insight that you brought up, and thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, I think on this beautiful note, we can end this conversation. Thank you, Swarna, for joining me in this conversation, and hope to see you again in this podcast maybe someday. And all the best for your, endeavors.
Thank you so much. I had so much fun, and good luck to you also. And I hope you become a kick-ass journalist in the future, and same for me, and then we collaborate and become awesome together.
10-20 years down the line we'll do this podcast.
10-20 is a bit much, I think.
Maybe 5.
I was thinking 5, yeah.
Fair enough, yeah. Sure, thank you, Swarna.
Yeah, see you. Yeah.
See ya.